Welcome to Intelligent Think, the podcast in which we explore what makes ideas great, how we can make our thinking better, and why it's so important to share your ideas with the world. Plus, we'll talk to thought leaders and authors about their own ideas and experiences so you can mine them for gold nuggets that will help you on your own journey. I'm Verity, and this is Intelligent Think. And today I'm chatting with the brilliant Erin Austin, who is a Harvard-educated attorney helping experts scale smart by protecting and monetizing their IP legally and ethically in a fast-changing world of AI, content creation, and corporate clients. And Erin, I loved this line from your website in particular. In a world where content can be copied in seconds and AI blurs the line between original and automated, Erin helps her clients stay in control, protecting what's theirs and building what scales. So it speaks to me so well. So thank you so much for joining me, Erin.
Oh, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. I feel like everyone's talking about AI. And so, when it comes to your intellectual property, that's what we, when we're doing books, that's a big part of what we do. And so when I met you and we were introduced by the fabulous Paschal Oshimade, I just thought, actually, we've got to get you on here to talk about IP and AI and all of the murkiness. So I guess what I'd love to understand first and foremost is what led you to focus on AI and kind of its impact on intellectual property?
Yeah, it was kind of a pull, actually. So my background is intellectual property lawyer. And by the way, to the extent we talk about the law today, it'll be from a perspective of U.S. law. And so I specialize in helping experts turn their expertise into licensable, scalable assets. And under U.S. intellectual property law, that means copyright. When I create a course, if I write a book, if I have a record a podcast, these are all things that are protected by copyright law. And so when 30 years ago now, I'm thinking time's gone so fast. And I was, silently in my little office trying to catch up on continuing legal education credits. And there was one about artificial intelligence. And I'm like, well, I'll just check my email while I was running in the background. I like AI to me was like blockchain or crypto. I'm like, what is that? I don't even know. And so I'm listening to this, CLE in the background. And then they start talking about chats. At the time, it was all chat GPT. And they're saying, it can do this and it can do that. And suddenly I was paying attention and I'm like, whoa, what is this? And then we started playing around with it. And so that was originally like, my awareness of AI, as something, other than Alexa or autocorrect, but as something that we used kind of intentionally. But I still really didn't think it would become part of my practice. Well, as obviously everyone should know by now, that when we are using generative AI, there are a number of intellectual property issues, and guess what they are? They are copyright issues. Are we committing a copyright infringement when we're taking somebody's book and, or taking an entire library of books, as the case may be with some developers, and using it as training data? Copyright means that the owner of the copyright has exclusive rights to give you permission to use their work, right? And so is there copyright infringement? And then with respect to the output, well, the black box that is AI, like, how do you know what's in that output? Can you get in trouble by using it? And even more importantly, if you're using it to create content that you want to own the copyright of, then you can't use AI to do that, under US copyright law. And I'm pretty sure certainly in the EU as well, the UK and EU, you cannot get copyright protection for content that is created by artificial intelligence. It has to be created by a human. And as of today, though this could change, AI is not a human as we speak. So that's how I got pulled into it. So people would, come to me like, because they know I'm a copyright lawyer, and talking about protecting their expertise and protecting their content. And like, well, what happens if I use AI? What happens? And, and I'm remembering just right now, the very first dollar I made in AI space was a speaker who had done a keynote at a conference, and then they took her speech and fed it into AI and created all this, derivative work from her speech,
Mm-hmm.
and that she didn't have anything in her agreement that prevented it. And so to provide some language for her speaker agreement to make sure that didn't happen again. So yeah, that was the beginning. My origin story, as I say.
It must be such a crazy field to be part of at the moment, because I imagine that, for decades and decades, probably copyright law has stayed pretty much the same,
Yes.
the way you protect your IP, pretty much the same. And now we're into this really crazy world where people are creating content that's pulling on, as you say, books. There was that whole thing, was it like 700,000 books, or 7,000 maybe? I've got the numbers totally wrong.
Well, the entire internet, frankly, but yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of books that are feeding into, the AI. And it's just suddenly become this real minefield of what do you own and how do you protect what you create. So for, experts, speakers, consultants, creators, the people that both you and I work with, what are kind of the biggest challenges that you're seeing face them at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, particularly if you're creating deliverables with AI, and at the end of the day, it's in everything, and it's almost impossible to avoid. Frankly, it's harder to avoid than to use, right? And so again, if we are using, for creators, and we want to create something that we want to use to scale our businesses, well, we can't scale our businesses, or we shouldn't try to scale our businesses with any materials that we don't own the exclusive rights to. And so if we are, writing a book or things like that, we want to make sure that we own that content. And obviously, the big question is, because there's not a clear answer, like it's still a little gray, what I use AI, let's just use ChatGPT for this conversation. I use it to create an outline for me, right? And then, maybe I then take that outline and I take the first bit and I ask it to, give me some bullet points. And maybe then from there, I write all the rest of the content out, it's all me. But maybe I then feed that back in and tell it to, like, how does this sound? And can you make it, a little bit, smoother, or can you add in some things? And then you have like this combined AI and human created content. And what of that is protectable and what of it isn't? And, the crazy part is that you really kind of won't know until somebody sues you. Like, it's not, there are, software that you can use that can go through and predict whether or not something was AI generated, but it's not always correct. I mean, I know perhaps this has happened to you or some of your clients, that you've actually changed the way you write because you don't want someone to think it was AI generated.
No more M dashes.
Even though it was, oh God, don't get me started with M dashes. They're like my favorite punctuation until this.
I know, that's my colleague Dave is so annoyed that AI has co-opted the M dash.
Yes. And so, we're always so mindful of everything. And so, but at the end of the day, I mean, it's not possible to really tell until, say, you write a book and it's some parts of it are AI generated, and you really do believe it's your work. I mean, because it happens. Like, even if you've not used AI, you can accidentally use something you learned somewhere, and that's in there. I mean, it's all in there, right? But it's more likely that it might be word for word if it comes out of AI than if it comes out of your memory. And then you have a claim, and then, like, look at that, I didn't know it. So really, it's the fact that we are all using it. I use AI. I'm not anti-AI. It's an amazing tool, and I encourage appropriate uses of it. But at the end of the day, it does blur the lines of authorship. It does,
I think that's such an interesting point, because we've sort of sat on not on the fence around AI, but being very
Mhm.
cautious, I suppose, in how we
Mhm.
suggest people use it when it comes to books. Like our general rule is it's okay for organizing, if you've got lots of information that you've already created, you could use that to kind of help you put it into the plan that you've created. But all the thinking up front, the strategy, the positioning, the structure should be you. And then, you could use it to organize some information. But generally anything that's like writing it, generating it, we're saying it should be a
Mhm.
human. We've come at that from the perspective of, I think that creates higher quality work. It's more
Yes.
unique. It's,
Mhm.
it's far more interesting for people to read. We've been given manuscripts to edit that clearly have used AI, and
Mhm.
they take probably 3 to 4 times longer to edit because they're just so
Mhm.
clearly not that person. The thinking isn't there.
Mhm.
The reader journey isn't there. So from our perspective, we've been saying, well, please, use it sparingly. You can use, there's certain places like research and things, great,
Right.
but use it sparingly. But I've got to admit, I hadn't even been thinking about it from the perspective of, well, if you're using it, even if you've put your own thinking into it, like, do you really own it? And
Mhm.
could you get, could someone come after you to say, actually, those are my words, that's my idea. So it's so like it just takes that blur and the gray area to a whole nother
Right.
level than what we've been thinking about even.
Right. Yeah. When we look at, copyright registration, which, under US law, copyright protection attaches at the moment of creation. So registration is not required. So at the moment that I put words to paper or to computer, pen, a brush to canvas, chisel to stone, when I'm creative, I'm human, and it's original, copyright protection attaches at the moment of creation. But we might want to register something for the additional protections. Like, so you can't use the courts to enforce an infringement unless it's been registered. And so if, probably most people listening here create content every day, and you're not going to register everything. But we do want to register the things that we are our money makers. I call them the money makers, whether it's a book or a course, whatever it is. We do want to protect those, because the things that if somebody stole it, you would just hire a lawyer. That's the way I look at it. If you would hire a lawyer because somebody stole this thing, register it. And because it's very expensive, by the way, so it has to really be worth it. Like, you don't hire a lawyer because somebody stole a blog post. It's because they took something that is worth a lot of money to you. And so, but part of that registration process now, because this is just where we are, is that they now have an extra line where you're supposed to declare the parts of that work that are AI generated. Well, how do you do that? When it's one thing if you wrote everything, but there's this one image, like, okay, that's the image, or that scenario that it came up with or something. But most of us, how, how do you declare what is the AI generated part? And it's not a percentage, there's not some magic, so you really won't know again until something goes wrong. Hopefully nothing does go wrong, but and someone is using something that's basically the same as yours, but hey, I got it out of ChatGPT just like you got it out of ChatGPT. It's not an infringement. So that's
And what's I guess the follow-on effect from that? So let's say you can't protect what you can't protect your book, you can't protect your course, whatever type of asset it is. When you can't protect that and people are able to take that, like what's the impact of that?
Well, I mean, it's literally you have no way to profit from it if somebody else can copy it and give it away. Didn't cost them anything to create it. And use it as their own. They can put their own name on it if it's part of, you worked to, you have a framework, and you've been using it inside your business. Maybe this could happen. You have a framework, you've been using it inside your business, but now you're going to create a public facing product from it, so you're going to turn it into a book. And anyone can read your book and learn from it, right? But it's a different thing if they can literally take all your words and just make it their own and create derivatives from it. They can take your book and create a workbook from it. And you couldn't prevent that if you don't own the rights and the exclusive copyrights in that work. So.
And it's so interesting. I remember a few years back, we used to say to people, like a lot of thought leaders or people who were aspiring to build thought leadership would get really worried about, what if somebody else, if I put all of this information out there, if I put all my knowledge and expertise out there, what if somebody else takes it? Because especially, they might protect a course or a book, but like they're sharing a lot of other content as well. And we used to say, if somebody's going to copy it, generally you're thinking so far ahead. Like the whole point of dedicating time to thinking and coming up with new IP and generating new ideas is that you're already 6 months ahead of them anyway. So even if they're using it, it's old news. Like, that's fine, but they're going to be so far behind. The problem now is that you can create that stuff and it can be out there and someone can be using it literally seconds later because of AI. And so actually that the benefit or the I suppose the advantage of being a thought leader and keeping your thinking ahead isn't necessarily there. Like that inbuilt protection of time isn't there anymore, because that knowledge and that expertise can be then shared and used almost instantly.
It is 100%. And the fact that they can digest it and copy it so easily and even modify it just enough. That's pretty easy to do too, right? And so staying ahead, I have worked with other experts who, give very freely their ideas very freely because they're that confident in their ability to just be, an innovator in the space. And so like, here, it's all free. And that if you want the originator of this type of thinking, you got to come to me. There'll always be people out there who can tell you they can, implement what I do. But and there'll be market for that. There'll always be a market for imitators. There'll always be, the Temu consultant who can deliver something. But if you want the original to be on your team, then you still have to go to the original person. That's why we still want to develop our expertise and still want to make sure that the market knows who we are so that they're coming to us for those premium buyers.
100%. We've obviously mentioned books quite a lot. Are there any other ways that you see kind of AI impacting IP and copyright when it comes to sort of books and publishing in that industry as a whole?
Well, now we've covered the main kind of legal issues regarding books. The issues that really where it really comes in is when you're a consultant and you're working with corporate clients, how you're working with the information that you're getting from clients. Either they're confidential information, they're talking to you about problems they're having, they need a strategy, and then you're feeding that into some sort of AI platform, which would be a breach of confidentiality. Or you're creating client deliverables for them. So just as we want to make sure that we own everything that comes out of that we are creating, any deliverable that you're delivering to a client, they're going to want to own that too. And, if you're reading your agreements, hopefully you are, you'll see that you have made representations and warranties that say all the deliverables are original and that you're giving me 100% of the copyrights, the intellectual property rights in that deliverable. And that you've used, best practice, industry best practices, that there are no errors in it. These are all things that you cannot give representations and warranties regarding if you are delivering just AI output without adding your own layer of expertise to it. It shocks me that still in 2025 that lawyers are being called out for filing briefs that have hallucinated citations in them because they just used AI to write a brief and didn't double check the citations. It's crazy.
Oh my God.
Me.
Lawyers are doing that.
Lawyers,
that's insane.
In fact, if I'm not mistaken, there was a lawyer on one of these AI like big AI litigations who did this. I mean, there's a lot of paper going back and forth, but one of them had a reference in there that was an hallucination, by that they obviously didn't fact check. So we had, there's no passing the buck to AI. We absolutely need to make sure always that there is, our own expertise is what is being delivered to the client or what's being presented to the world. Either way, however it's being used, 100%.
And I bet there's many of us who have not remotely looked at the terms and conditions of those agreements. So it's a good reminder to do that. We recently got our terms and conditions looked at to apply for US law, because we're starting to work with a lot more US clients and things. And I was flummoxed by how much more needed to be in there than for in New Zealand, because the US copyright laws are so much more stringent than what we have in New Zealand. And I think in general, like, we don't have a litigious, nation. It's difficult to sue. It's difficult to, do all those things. And so, but it was a good reminder that I'm like, oh, all of those terms and conditions that I'm going, yeah, it's fine. There's things in there that I really should be reading. So it's another good reminder.
Yeah. And by the way, I've been waiting for those last 3 years to start seeing in client MSA, master services agreements, language about AI use. And I am just now seeing it, which is really shocking to me as well. And but that doesn't mean that the old language that's always been around doesn't apply, just like we just talked about. Confidentiality, data protection, all that kind of stuff still applies to AI usage. So, yeah.
So we've talked quite a lot about kind of the challenges. What are the, when you're working with clients to protect and make sure that they are looking after their IP, what kind of tools do you give them? What sort of things are you looking at to help them make sure that actually they can stay in control and protect what's theirs?
Yeah, it really is. I'll say this, that sometimes people are just overwhelmed by the choices. I'm not an AI consultant, so I don't help people choose what AI to use. But I do help them make sure they're using the right tool for the right circumstance, So ChatGPT, for instance, use it all you want to. Use the free version all you want to in order to turn, your podcast into social media posts. It's all public. Who cares, right? But don't use it for those client deliverables, for the things that work for you. So the way I help them is making sure that they understand that every platform has a different use case, and to understand like what features are appropriate for what use. I like to talk about Otter and Fathom, for instance, for recording. Like, a lot of people use that. Now, Otter has caught up, but there was a time when Otter very clearly said that, we use the recordings to as part of our training data. They say it was anonymized. Well, what difference does that make? If I tell you, my plans to, save the world, the fact that it's not attributed to me, isn't that helpful if I've just told everyone in the world what my plans are to save the world, right? And so versus, a Fathom that very clearly never used the recordings as training data. So we talk about, how to find terms of use, how to read them, how, the things you need to be looking for, and determining whether or not it's the right tool for your right use. Also, again, understanding their agreement or obligations to their clients. And for those who are in high risk industries, so right now the EU is ahead of the US, of course, in terms of regulations. But what will be happening starting in 2026 are regulations regarding high risk usage by the users. There have been regulations regarding the developers, the people who create AI, but not about the users, also called deployers. So what will be coming online are what the standards are for using AI when you are in some high-risk industries, such as legal, financial, healthcare, education, so that you, and there are, if it's one person, it doesn't apply to you, but there are standards about when you have obligations to make sure that you're using it safely and ethically. And so making sure, I feel like my role is translator, like here's all that stuff, and this is what you need to know in order to stay safe. And and if I come out of a session and people are confused, obviously I failed. Like, that's when I know, okay, I didn't translate that, as simply and as usefully. I want it to be really useful, as it could be. And so that's always my job, is to make sure that I am, like, making something usable, implementable, taking away some of the overwhelm, being confident, because at the end of the day, we have to use AI. I mean, it's everywhere.
We don't have a choice now.
Yeah, right. So it's not about saying don't use it, unless you're a painter or something, but how making sure that they're confident in the way that they're using it, and it doesn't feel like the wild, wild west, that it's not scary, that they can really get the benefits, the productivity benefits, which are very real, of using AI, but still feeling good about it. So that's the way I see my role.
I love that, because I think one of the things that we've been grappling with quite a lot is, can you use AI ethically? Like, is that even possible? And so I think the way that you framed it around, like, where are the use cases that you can use it, and where shouldn't you? And that might depend on your role. I think that's so important, to be able to get really clear on, how am I using this, and why am I using this, and which tools am I using, and what are their policies? Because actually, we sort of think of AI as this big overarching term, but there's so many different tools, and they're all different.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, depending on, what industry you're in, what type of data that you process, there'll be a different specialized tool for it. I have a client in clinical research, and so they're very specialized tools for, recruiting patients and looking at health. There's a tool for everything, and a lot of them are new, frankly. And it is kind of interesting. Here's this one where new tool, new Stanford grads, very smart, Stanford University, smart kids, but kids. It's just on the kids. So I'm in this, call like this, and I'm looking at these kids who developed this, really great innovative tool, and there's no denying any of that. But you think, but okay, well, something goes wrong, like, is there any money behind this person? If you need to sue them because you used their tool and they got you in trouble, is there anything behind this company? And that's, some of the things you need to think about when you're choosing tools that are newer or niche. They may not have much behind them. Just something to think about there. But
God, I'd never even thought of that. You've given me so much to think about it, and I love it. I'm so excited. That's my favorite kind of conversation, where I go out of it with my brain just buzzing in different directions.
Oh yeah. It's exciting. I mean, it's an exciting time. I was just telling someone the other day that I have only, I want to say, 3 email lists that I'm on that are about AI. And I'm overwhelmed, like overwhelmed, because there's something new. Like, one is like, what's new, new functions, new tools. One is just for lawyers, and the other is kind of just general interest. That's it. And I'm completely overwhelmed by all of the information that's coming in. And so, I mean, I encourage people to, this is on my only consulting kind of thing I do. I'm not a consultant, but when we think about tools, like, start with the problem. Don't start with the tool. Start with the problem. Like, what is the problem you're trying to fix? Is it that, you're always when you have to send out a proposal that that's kind of a thing. And oh my God, then get a tool that helps you with proposals and don't worry about all the other stuff. If it's turning your podcast into social media posts, get a tool that will help you turn social media posts. Is it, creating slides for presentations? Get a tool that, but start with the problem first. Don't start with the tool. So that would be my one piece of advice there.
I love that, because I think that advice goes back to any technology as well. I think about 10 years ago when we were looking at what tools we picked to use in the business, and everybody who was an expert in the space was going, don't think about the tools, think about the problem, get really, really clear on what you're trying to do, and then choose the tool. And so it's like, actually, the tools have gotten infinitely more sophisticated and complicated and overwhelming and all of that, but actually the way you approach it is still much the same. It's still very much figure out what you need and then go from there, which I think is slightly less scary than you need to use AI because everybody's using AI, and if you don't use AI then you'll be left behind, which is kind of the message that we're getting from a lot of people right now, I think.
Well, certainly from the developers of AI, for sure.
Yes.
I use ClickUp in my business. Don't even ask me how it works. I don't know how to use it. I have a system for that. But I get an email like, oh, we now have AI. I'm like, what would I need AI for? ClickUp. Like what? And so, and I don't know how often I see someone complaining about some tool. Well, my accountant in QuickBooks, they're forcing some sort of AI function on her, and she's going, I can't, and she's trying to get around it.
I've got to admit that the enforced AI and tools really gets my goat, because I'm trying to be really mindful about how I use AI, and I do use AI, but I'm trying to be really mindful about how I use it. And so then when I open up literally every tool that I now use, and I'm just like, I don't need you all the time. I can do some things myself.
Yes. You're just do I want to learn something new in order for something that I didn't even need? So definitely protect your space there for sure.
100%. Erin, before we jump off, is there anything else that you wish people knew about AI, about intellectual property? What do you wish, if you could get some message across to everybody in the world, what would you love to wave a magic wand and get across to them?
Well, I guess it would be, we talked briefly about can there be an ethical use of AI? And to me, the answer is yes, but I do not believe that there is any ethical use of AI without significant human involvement. Again, I'm a big fan of AI. Agentic AI scares the bejesus out of me. And so agentic AI is that they can operate on its own. It can make decisions by itself. It can turn and pivot by itself. It can answer questions, all without human intervention. And as we know, there will never be a perfect, because humans aren't perfect and AI isn't perfect. And that's why we have insurance for things, because it's not perfect. But, how much control are you going to give up to something like that? And so for people just to, be mindful of its limitations, and I guess the limitations are a good thing for humanity. I think we're in trouble when it has no limitations, but for the now, it has limitations, and we need to be mindful of it. And then just the other thing is, not using AI as a substitute for your expertise. There's a reason the client has engaged you. The reason they bought your book, it's for you, and so being ethical means that, you are delivering yourself and not AI generated content to your audience, whoever they may be. So that would be, I don't know if that was, I think that is the thing I want people to understand the most, how important that is. Yeah,
I couldn't agree more. So, and I'm kind of glad to hear that from you, who is much more of an AI expert than I am, because I feel as though sometimes we're on a little bit of the no AI, go away side. And so I'm like, to hear you say, I love AI, I think it's really great. And here are all the things you need to consider. I think that's really, really, really powerful and valuable, because it's not going away. We're not getting rid of it. So how do we use it ethically and well in a way that still, gives people the value that we can bring as humans?
Absolutely. Agreed.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me. It's been such a pleasure, and I feel like I've learned so much. Which is my favorite kind of. Really, it's half the reason I made this podcast, is so that I can learn some things. So thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for the wonderful questions, and thank you for letting me share your audience with you.
Oh, my pleasure. You have been listening to Intelligent Think with Verity Craft and Christina Wedgwood, brought to you by Intelligent Inc. Thanks to our guest, Erin Austin, Jeff Ong for our theme music, and to you for listening. Don't forget to leave us a review if you liked what you heard, and share it with your friends. And here's to better thinking together.